All good things must come to an end, and as we see the end of the NBL season come to a close for this round, it is round 20, so many big games ahead. We also come to a close here at the panel. It's been an amazing first season. We've loved having you with us, but we have a huge show for you today. It is round 20. Like I said, it starts tonight. As always, I'm Kelsey Brown, your host of the panel, the official SuperCoach NBL show, and I'm joined by our experts. We're going to talk about all of our favourite players throughout the season, some of the hots and nots and what you might want to do for the final round. But without further ado, I welcome in JC, basketball superstar, SuperCoach wizard. We absolutely love having you with us. So JC, I want to ask you, who are you trading in this week?
Look, Kels, you said all good things must come to an end. I contend that my team is not any good. So I'm just happy that it's actually coming to an end, basically, at this point. I'm like every Mavs fan out there this week when the Luka Doncic trade happens, right? So that bad. On NBA Australia, I'm just like getting flooded with like just distraught messages, people beside themselves. And I'm like, that's how I felt about my SuperCoach all year. I get it. I get it now. All my trades don't seem to work. Just call me Nico Harrison at this point. It's a Barry Crocker shocker. But this week, Kels, we've got like these two teams remaining on doubles, round 20. It's grand final time. It is rubber hits road time. And I am in one remaining grand final out of all my leagues. Woo! So I'm going to have a crack. But we've got some big ones. I'm probably going to go the two Cairns players that I'll mention later. Yeah, love that. Our second expert is Mick Randall. Mick, I'm so happy that you've worn a shirt today. Shout out to your partner who told you to wear a shirt. She said wear a shirt. I'll never wear a shirt. I absolutely love what you've brought to the table today. Mick Randall, News Corp writer for the basketball side of things. We love having you with us as well. Mick, I want to know, what are you doing this week?
Well, Cairns and Illawarra, right? I just got to decide who I actually bring in and who I decide to trade out, and the guys that I think are going to give me the money to do that, but also score enough points on my bench to win my league, which I think I'm in all the grand finals of my league. So. All
right. I'm in none, so I keep saying that I've been the rookie this season. I'm happy for you guys, though. Let's move to the hot and not. It's pretty consistent here on the hot list. Bryce, Montrez, Kendrick. Christian Doolittle enters into that, but I know, JC, you have been dying to talk about this man, Geordie Hunter.
Here we go.
Go for it.
Here we go.
What is it? Even a broken clock is right twice a day? Like, nailed it. Like, this is the last week, if you rewind, he was at 202K. If you needed a bargain big man, I'm like, all right, Geordie Hunter's your guy. He's got an awesome schedule. He just goes and rips off 75 across the round. Woo. There's my victory lap. I deserve one this year, right? Like, it was all right about two things. Kendrick Davis being awesome and Geordie Hunter in round 19 nailed it. I'm just saying. Thing is, I also went to Christian Doolittle last week after saying, no chance, can't do it. It was the only thing I could also afford. And he wasn't too bad.
That's a couple of pretty good trades, mate.
Absolutely. So Geordie Hunter and Christian Doolittle both on the hot list this week. JC, I've never seen you happier sitting in that chair. Mick Randall, let's talk about the not list. Jalen Adams, Jack White, injuries for those guys. H.J. Lee, Isaiah Liafa and Chris Golding, which is interesting on there. But moving to Jalen and Jack, I'm sure people have probably moved off them already, but a reminder that if you haven't, these guys are battling back issues.
Well, I guess it's like those two are both primos that have been sore. Like Jack obviously copped a knock last week during training, and Jalen's been kind of battling the back all season, and he's put up some pretty serious numbers with a bad back. So, I mean, there's no reason if he plays, and they've got an important game against Illawarra that will decide whether they, make the top four or face an elimination play-in. So there's a potential for him to bust out a big one. So if people haven't moved off those guys, they can produce if they're all right, if they get it right.
Yeah, it's time to do that if you haven't already. Shout out to, now we want to go through round 19 because that's important, but we also want to go through the leaderboard and talk about what's happening at the top there. So Cotton Pickers for Ross, 608, Smashers for Danny, 598, Spaceman for Patrick, and Macca, interesting one for Neil, and Demon Kings for Mark. All the top shout-out-tos for round 19. However, we absolutely love what you did in round 19. There is a leaderboard that is really important at the moment because it's grand final week. It's the end of SuperCoach for the season. Our leaderboard as it currently sits at the moment. So we've got 1, 2 clear and an equal third at the moment. So the Cotton Stones are on 9,147 points, a score I could only dream of. Nothing But String is 54 points behind the top on 9,093. And Yachty and the Elephants coming in at equal third. JC, you seem to be across what these teams are doing and why potentially these guys are on 9,000 and I don't know what I'm on, maybe like 6.
Well, both these teams are obviously loaded, right? Like that's the entire thing. The top two, just to sort of, look at the Cotton Stones, like they've set their team up very, very nicely. They've already got Froling and Groves in the front court basically, as well as Wardenberg with Trez. Like this is a really, really good setup. And it kind of feels like they might have the wood over Nothing But String, which is the number 2 team that obviously has to outscore them, as you said, Carlos, by what, 54? They've got a very, very, very solid team where you've got a lot of the Taipans. They've got Groves, they've got Bradshaw, they've got Trez and Hurt as well. They've got Wardenberg and Humphrey. So there's a couple of interesting differences, right? Like Froling versus Humphreys this week. And the guards, they've both got Bryce and KD. But unfortunately for Nothing But String, Rob Edwards and Dylan Windler versus the Cotton Stones having Jalen Adams and Nathan Sobey.
Well, I reckon the Strings will be, I think it says there that he's got 2 trades left, right? So I reckon he'll be looking closely at Cotton Strings and going, okay, who can I get that's a point of difference, and just hope like hell that they score really well and he gets a couple of injuries, right?
But it's also amazing looking at these teams and looking how loaded they are, and like actually having those, options and that optionality about what am I going to do for the last week to actually take out the top ranked prize and be number 1 overall this year in the entire SuperCoach NBL universe, which is pretty massive.
It's absolutely massive, and I would love to go back in time and see what moves they made when and how they sort of, how they ended up where. Massive congratulations to you guys for even just ending up in the top is a huge deal. 9,000 points for all of you. Unbelievable effort. But you guys have already touched on a few things that we want to move to. Cairns versus Illawarra is probably the big question around the most traded in at the moment. On our most traded in list, Sam Froling, Sam Wardenberg, Trey Kell, Pedro and Taryn. So very Illawarra Cairns centric. JC, are you leaning towards one or the other? Where are you going?
I'm leaning Cairns, Kels, and that's like the entire thing is essentially like it became this week is essentially a debate between who are you bringing in, why, and do you believe in Illawarra, who have to win one of these games to like lock away top spot, obviously. They have a game against New Zealand, and then they have a game against Sydney. Hated rivals, which is very interesting, I think, Mick. But they also have a big break after that. So are they just going to play their guys in that second game, even if they've locked away the top spot? The flip side is Cairns, they're without Rob Edwards now. Just means an open season, I think, for Pedro, for Tanner Groves. I'm probably leaning towards Cairns. I think they're out there trying to make a bit more of a sort of impact. Even though they're out of the running, I feel like they might be a little bit more sort of, susceptible for at least playing both games all the way through. Whereas if someone would play, if you bring in Froling, Cal or Harvey, you might only get 1.5 games. And that might put a bit of a cap possibly on his SuperCoach score. At the same time, there's not a name on there that I would have probably preferred there, Mick. Maybe Davo Hickey. Like if Cal and Harvey are like limited in their minutes, maybe Hickey has a really, really sort of nice run in those last 2.
I think it's a real like take a punt round, right? Like especially for Illawarra, and I'd be more inclined to say, hey, like they might shelve it if it was Sydney then Brisbane. But because it's New Zealand, sorry. So it's because New Zealand first tonight, and then they go into Sydney, and they have the opportunity to, against their hated rivals, go, well, if we win, you guys are going to finish 5th, and you're going to have to play an eliminator. So I think that Illawarra would be very keen to make sure that that happens to the Kings. So, I'm a little bit bullish on picking the Illawarra guys. But your point on Davo Hickey is really good. He already produces a lot. He's fit as hell. And if they do decide to rest, one of Harvey or Cal, he's probably going to be the main beneficiary. So he could explode for a 40 plus.
20-15-1 his last 3 against New Zealand, and I think 31-19 his last 3 against Sydney. So Hickey is like this. But if you give him the opportunity, we've seen him just go bang this season, which has been awesome. But Cal also, like, that's sort of my problem with Harvey and Cal. They've also been kind of inconsistent throughout the season. Cal has been fantastic, but then they had a couple of quiet weeks.
It's because they have so many guys that contribute, right? Exactly. So it's like, if one's down, and Justin Tatum's not scared to go, all right, Trey, you're having a bit of an off night, we're going to roll out, Davo, or, go with those different lineups. But here's another thought as well. Do they, tonight, against New Zealand, end up rotating those guys? keeping them fresh for the game against Sydney on Friday or Saturday, whenever it is.
Yeah.
That's possible.
I feel like Tatum is not a coach that messes around with playing or anything like that. I feel like, this is just my personal opinion, but I feel like he's the kind of person that would want to go into a break having had 2 good games under his belt, a win, 2 good wins, and it definitely a win against Sydney. So I personally think I would ride with the Illawarra train. And David Hickey is a great one. You guys mentioned off air about the traded out. Now we're faced with some problems this week around some guys are on single games. The big question, JC, is who are you going to ride with on a single game? Who do you rely on? Who can you gamble with? What are you going with if there are people on single games and you can't get onto a Cairns or an Illawarra player?
Well, I mean, you look at the ownership percentages across the board for SuperCoach, and the 3 most sort of owned dudes who have a single this week will be, in most of these teams, it'll be Montrez, it'll be Kendrick Davis, and it will be Bryce Cotton. They play each other. This is amazing.
It's the one game, yeah. Hopefully it's 150, 148, right?
Exactly. So this is going to be a chaos game. I can't wait for it because Perth, to get into the top 2, have to win this game. And this is the key aspect about who do you want to bring in this week on these singles. You have to look at the schedule. You have to look at like what teams are actually got something to play for. That's the one thing about Cairns where you're like, oh, well, they don't have anything to play for apart from a bit of pride for probably some of these players wanting to make a good impression. Whereas Perth, they actually have a fire to be lit under them. They have to beat Adelaide really, really, really handily. And we know that Adelaide like sacrificed like SuperCoach points like nobody else almost. So Bryce versus KD, that's an awesome battle. You could probably roll with both of them. I'd probably prefer to keep both those guards and maybe move Trez if you have to move one of your players for, one of the Cairns or Illawarra players. The thing is, like, Adelaide, Mick, that's the big question for me. They're locked into 6, right? So if you think about what they have to do, like, do they want to at least go into the finals feeling better about themselves, having caught 2 pretty tough losses?
I think 100% that will be there for them in terms of, okay, they've lost those 2 games where they only had to win 1 and it would have stitched it up.
Yeah.
So, like, winning form is good form. Wildcats have spanked them 3 times this year, or twice this year, either or. And so you want to win when you go in for you know they're going to be 6, so you want to take winning form into the play-in.
It has been a very interesting one for Adelaide the last 2 weeks. I loved what Brad Rosen had to say, that Adelaide should fear themselves. He is a big SuperCoacher as well. I want to give Brad Rosen a shout out. I think he would have loved to be on this show at some point. Shout out to you, Brad Rosen. There's so much that we can do this week. In your grand final, JC, is there any point of difference that you're going to go for? Is there any, you spoke about the moves that you're going to make. You're probably going to err towards Cairns, but is there anything else that you're doing this week for your big preparation for the grand final?
Well, I mean, sitting back and cracking a few and just like watching a lot of basketball is probably the answer there, I think. But the entire thing is like, I'll probably go the Cairns, I'll probably go Pedro, I'll probably go Tanner. Like, I feel like I don't want to be sort of stuck in this position where I'm looking at the Illawarra team, just going, all right, we'll take it a little bit easy against New Zealand, or maybe we'll take it a little bit easy against Sydney, and you see them going, what have I done? What have I done? I made a horrible mistake. Whereas the Cairns one, I feel like at least the ceiling might be a little bit higher for those guys. So especially going into a grand final, I kind of want that higher ceiling, because like you lose the grand final, you lose, right? At least you've rolled the dice, you've had a crack. Hickey, Froling, Cal, Harvey, they're all really good options, but I kind of feel like the ceiling just might be that little bit higher for Cairns. I mean, the games that they have this week where they've got Brisbane as well. We know that they just give up points like there's no one's business. The other one's a tougher one where they play Tassie. And it's like, that's probably the one that gives you a little bit of pause, but I think I'll still probably go with Pedro and Tanner at this point.
Mick, any final thoughts for you for your grand final prep?
Yeah, so I've already got, I already had Froling, Wardenberg and Groves. So nice starter. I had them on the bench going, okay, we'll slot them in. So I've got to decide what I do from there. And the one I've already done is Pedro. I think that he's been really good over the past couple of weeks. I reckon he's like, popping out 40s left, right and centre in games, so which is exactly what you need. And then I've got to make a decision. I guess I'm leaning towards Cal, but I haven't decided on that yet. I think I like the idea of having 3 and 2. So you've kind of got a bit of a split.
Yeah, splitting it between Cairns and Illawarra. Well, as always, guys, it's a pleasure to have your company. Thank you so much for all of your insights. For those of you at home, don't forget to go to supercoach.com.au for all of your SuperCoach needs. The NBL app has the live scores as well. And like I said at the top, it is our last show here at the panel. It has been a pleasure to have you join us each and every week for our first season. And to all of the crew behind the scenes to make this possible, thank you so much for your help as well. And all the best for everyone in their finals this week. Go hard.
Hey, also, Kelsey, great job as the SuperCoach rookie. How well has this been? She's not had any idea about what's happening as she goes into it and absolutely crushed it.
Absolutely killed it.
Thanks so much, JC and Vic. I have learned so much this year, and I think that I'm going to be tussling for the top this time next year. Don't mark my words with that at all. Thanks again for you guys for joining us, and all the best for your SuperCoach endeavours.